KC Johnson has revealed that the Chicago Bulls were impressed by University of North Carolina's Drake Powell. So in today's episode, we're going to talk about him. Apparently, he's a sleeper in this upcoming draft that could be selected in the second round for the Chicago Bulls. Y'all know we're going to talk about it and break it down right after this.
Cognac. Gang.
Shy Bulls podcast with the Cognac Boys. I'm Cognac Boy Bobby, and I'm holding it down on today's daily episode. So if you're tuned in with me today, make sure you hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and hit that notification bell as well. Now, my man's KC Johnson, y'all know him for being around the Chicago Bulls. He was doing a little bit of reporting about the state of the Chicago Bulls and said that he's not going to be shocked if the Chicago Bulls do take a guard at some point in this draft. I just hope it's not at the 12th pick, just me personally. But if you're giving me a guy that you can use for the 45th pick in the second round, I'm all for it, especially if you're getting a guy that has some really, really good tools that you can work with. Now, KC Johnson reported that the Bulls worked out Drake Powell out of the University of North Carolina, and they were really, really impressed with what Drake Powell can do. KC Johnson went out and said he's the toolsy prospect in this NBA draft, and I was very, very interested to see what the hell he meant. Hey, and when you go and you look at Drake Powell, you say, hey, this is a young player that has a lot of tools. You know what I'm saying? He comes in out of UNC at 6'6", 195 pounds, played 37 games last year and started 24 of those games, averaging 7 points, 3 rebounds, 1 assist, 48% shooting from the field and 37% shooting from the three-point line. And what a lot of people believe is that this could be one of those good two-way players that you could potentially find later in the draft. So it's very, very interesting when you see. Then Yahoo Sports, Kevin O'Connor wrote about my man's Drake Powell this past March and said that he's a switch everything defender who plays with a high motor. And if his spot up jumper translate, he checks all the boxes to be a 3-and-D role player at a minimum. Now, I turned on the clips, I turned on the film, did some extensive work, looked at the man, and I think that the man has a lot of things that you like about his game. I don't think that he does anything absolutely great, but I think that with some fine tuning, he can go out there and be a really good player in the NBA. I'm not going to go out there and put these high expectations on a player like that, because sometimes you come in with high expectations. Some people live up to those expectations. Some people don't live up to those expectations. But what I like about him offensively is that this man can do things in a number of ways. You can see him shoot the ball off the dribble. You can see him go ahead and be a good spot up shooter. You can see him go ahead and drive into the paint and use his body, that 6'6" frame, to move mugs out the way, which I love the physicality in those things. A guy that's active on the boards, you can see a little bit of that. I know that the numbers don't really, show all of that, and you only get a few glimpses of what these players can do with just looking at highlights and just trying to dissect different videos that are put together that's on the web. But at the same time, you are still able to look at some of those things. So me personally, not seeing anything really great, but seeing that this young player in Drake Powell can do a lot of good things. You know what I'm saying? Do a lot of good things. And then on the defensive side, slides his feet very well. Slides his feet very well. And is willing to get up there and bang a little bit. And is willing up there to go out there and block shots as well throughout his collegiate career, at least for the small time he was at UNC. You know what I'm saying? Almost a full block per game. You know what I'm saying? So it's nothing to sneeze at, and almost a full steal per game. This is a guy that is looked at as a guy that can come in and play the 2 or the 3. So it'll be interesting to see how focused the Chicago Bulls are when they're trying to look at a guy like this with this type of talent. I think he does a lot of things well with some fine tuning, with some coaching. He could very well be one of those players that fit the Chicago Bulls well. I think that if you look at him and you say, What are some of your concerns? One of my concerns is Kevin O'Connor from Yahoo Sports said some comparison is Patrick Williams. Hold on, buddy. Hold on, buddy. We don't want to hear that. We don't want to hear that. You can find nobody else to comp this man to, just by personal opinion. You couldn't find nobody else to comp this man to. That's all I'm asking. You couldn't find nobody else to compare my man's Drake Powell to other than Patrick Williams. Nobody in Chicago is feeling really good about Patrick Williams at this moment in time. We're tired of hearing all the different excuses. We're tired of hearing about how athletically built he is and how much athleticism he has on the basketball court. We necessarily don't want to hear that right now at this time and space. But I think that if you are looking at a Drake Powell, you do look at what has transpired. This is the guy that was once thought of to being a top 10 pick. At least that's some of the things that's been circling around, couple rumors. I don't necessarily know how true that was, but for a guy to be slated as being a top 10 pick to moving to the second round and could potentially be now back on the rise after, they went through the combine and he has some workout with some teams, that could be very interesting. But then at the same time, it's like, how do you go from top 10 to the second round? So those are just some of my concerns, especially when you're looking at different players and different prospects on how they can potentially fit the Chicago Bulls. Because for me, I don't want guys to enter the Chicago Bulls and be guys that are puppies. I want dogs. We need dogs on this team. We need some rough riders on this team, because you look around and you see different situations and you watch how some guys fold, and you don't necessarily want your young guys to be afraid of the moment. You want your guys, you know what I'm saying? Sometimes you just go get beat. But in most cases, you want those guys to exuberate a lot of confidence within themselves and be dogs. So it is a bit concerning. I had to throw that out there. It'll be negligent for me to go out there and just omit things like that, especially when you're going out and you're reading and you're trying to look at how a prospect is potentially doing or how they've done, in the past. You have to consider those things. I don't know how much we take into account that, he's been having a close relationship, or what's being reported, a relationship with Kobe White, has been a player in Chris Paul's AAU team. I don't know how much we take into account of that. Me personally, I don't take too much of that into thought, but I will show a little respect for it, because if you're going out there and you're receiving some coaching for former NBA players, especially a player like a Chris Paul, that's very intriguing to me. I think those are some things that you look at and be like, okay, cool. Because I look at Chris Paul and what he's done for different guys around the league, and you say, hey, he's actually had an impact on a lot of players play that we're seeing today. And one of them is Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, who's a damn MVP and just sent the Minnesota Timberwolves home, not playing with them boys. And then you look at Kobe White, all the trials and tribulations that he went through, and you see Chris Paul, you know what I'm saying, have be that mentor for him. And then excuse me. And then you see Kobe White translate into this player that he is today, which is a really good player. You know what I'm saying? Do we have expectations for Kobe White to take another step forward? I personally do. But that's not going to be up to me. It's going to be up to Kobe White. And now this young player coming into the NBA, what is the work ethic going to look like? I believe he has some really, like I said, I really believe that he has some really good tools, but how does he hone in on them tools to find out who he really is? And there's other things that you hear about this young guy that said that, hey, his role was kind of limited and things like that. Look, I just, like I said, I understand that there's sometimes you just got to sit there and fit in your role, but then if you're that guy, you're just that guy. You know what I'm saying? If you're that guy on any team that's basketball, football, whatever, the coach is not going to sit there and say, yeah, just go ahead over there. Now the coach is going to say, come on, we need you to win basketball games. We need you to win football games. So it's going to be very, very interesting to see how Drake Powell translates to into a Chicago Bull, if that ever does happen. Again, we don't know what they're going to do. We have our speculations, we have our ideas, but again, ultimately it's up to Arturis and Mark Eversley, who we never see. That's ultimately what it's going to be. But I do think that the player is a sleeper pick. I think that he got, if he go out there and he's able to refine some things, tool it up, get right. He got a lot of things you can work with. Again, the handle is there. You know what I'm saying? He can tighten it up though. The shooting is there. The driving ability is there. He can create a little bit for himself just for a few clips here and there. You can see those. And then on the defensive side, the man can slide his damn feet and get blocks and help out on the rebounding department. Despite that, the numbers not really translating. But I always say, look at the numbers and then marry it to the tape, the film, whatever you want to call it, and then have a good determination, because sometimes stats don't tell the full story. That's my only point when it comes to looking at any type of player, even breaking down games on either in either sport. If you're gonna just sit there and just look at stats, you're doing yourself a disservice, in my opinion, simply because you gotta watch the film. You got to watch the film. Some people just like to look at, oh my God, somebody had a plus 10, plus 10, plus minus. No, what did the story say? What does the story say? Did the man have a plus 10 by being a force on the court, or did this team have to sit him down in certain moments of the game because he just couldn't go out there and defend the opposing team? So if you're going to go out there and utilize some of these stats, you got to marry it to what your eyes are telling you. That's the only point. But hey, we'll see what transpires out of this. The Chicago Bulls are very, very impressed by this young player. I'm not going to go out there and sell him short. I'm gonna go out there and say, hey, go out there and just do some things for yourself. And if you are a Chicago Bull, let's get it cracking. That's it. Let's get it cracking and let's make sure it's going down in the right way. But hey, that is it for me today, y'all. I appreciate y'all for tuning in to another episode of Shy Bulls Podcast. Before y'all get up out of here, make sure you hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and hit that notification bell as well, man. We appreciate y'all. Make sure y'all always see red. And y'all already know I'm going to catch y'all on the next one for sure.
Cognac.